So the big question is, can you manifest without taking any action? But there's two other questions. Why would you manifest without action? And why not just do it the regular way of cause and effect? Action straight into results. Before I list the immense benefits and difference between manifestation and cause and effect, let me emphasize that action is a beautiful thing and part of a rich life. So this isn't about dissing it. It's about realizing that action isn't always the first step, nor the only way when it comes to having what you really desire. And for some things, manifestation simply works faster, or with an incredible effortlessness, where multiple things all come together at the right time in the perfect way. Now, for anyone who feels anxious to hear the answer and says, I really want to know, can I manifest without taking action? I'll provide that answer now. Yes, it's 100% possible. Manifestation can definitely happen without action. And I have many examples of it, and I'll share one big one today with you. What you should know is when to make this relevant, though. Otherwise, you can go down a rabbit hole of hoping and wishing, and years later feel like you've lost valuable time when you could have been doing things and living your life. So it's not a, this or that, black and white kind of thing. There is a lot of gray here, and I want you to be aware of that. The other obvious fact is that the kind of person that gets interested in manifesting is someone who's probably been trying to create or get something the usual way by taking the actions everyone talks about, and yet nothing is happening. Or what is happening is not enough, or maybe it feels kind of off base, not really complete or as desired. To get clear on this, let's look at why action isn't the one answer. First of all, action is based on limited awareness typically. That's fine when it's a simple or known process, but the bigger things in life aren't. Most people take action based on what they already know. And what any of us knows at one particular moment in time is always limited. That's why we talk about 20/20 hindsight or say things like, if only I'd known this sooner. There are so many things that have to happen for the simplest result to occur. Receiving the outcome you desire is actually a highly precise experience. It requires infinite things to come together into the moment that you will get the outcome. Like, what if you turned left instead of right? What if you woke up happy and took another route to work? What if you ignored your impulse and made a decision that wasn't really what you wanted, or you made it out of stress? It all counts. But we can't be worrying about every step we take, every thought we think, or we'd go crazy. That's stressful. So there's another state of being we can choose. And once we're there, we begin to see how everything changes and manifests all the time. And it doesn't require us to be constantly vigilant. Now, connected to that limitation I'm talking about is a reality that we all have certain pathways we travel in our brains more often than others. Thought patterns that we've created strong grooves in so that we end up there by default more often than not. You know how you wake up thinking it's a new day, yet find yourself thinking the same old thoughts you were thinking yesterday and asking the same questions as the day before, all before you've had breakfast. Yes, that's what I mean by those grooves you've been creating. So creating a plan of action usually sends us down those pathways rapidly, the things we already know, the ways we've already thought, the kind of things everybody else around us is talking about. We can make new plan after new plan to find that nothing has fundamentally changed. So again, we find ourselves wondering about manifesting. Now, just the choice of saying, I'm going to manifest, detaches you from those typical thought waves, from limiting assumptions, and it opens the doors to things happening in unexpected ways, exponentially increasing what is possible. I don't know about you, but many of the best things that have happened to me showed up seemingly out of the blue, or in places I showed up at that were like out of my typical routine. Yet they often, when I look back, I can see how I was really already operating on some elements of manifestation. So there's your first manifesting clue. Get out of your normal ways of doing things where you don't know what to expect. Inject newness into your life regularly. Keep your life fresh, small ways and in big ways. The second big reason that the cause and effect path is limiting is that it can take so long. In truth, cause and effect is usually trial and error, and so you won't know what works for you until it actually does. But you have a false sense of security because you might see everyone else doing it the same way and think, well, it must work if everybody else is doing it. Not so. The places where cause and effect is almost guaranteed are those outcomes that are usually quite easy for us or are already in alignment with what we've grown up to believe. So there's no resistance to having them happen. Or they can follow a path where, you get a result, yet it lacks fulfillment. Like getting a degree and then choosing a major that you think will make you more successful, but then a few years down the road, you realize you hate it. You took the actions, you got the result, but it wasn't a match to your deeper intentions. Manifestation works on those higher emotions, so I'll talk about that later. But let's get into the manifestation topic. When is it easy? Because there are places when manifestation seems so easy. The most consistent place it works best is on things you don't need in the moment, where you have no attachment and where you have no resistance. It's easier when you can elicit relaxed, higher emotions like joy, delight, appreciation, wonder, instead of the heavier energies of wanting, fearing, needing, or ego, like having to prove yourself. A lot of people, have talked about, for example, getting that parking spot. Yeah, I imagine getting that parking spot right in front of the theater so I could arrive on time and have rock star parking, and they get it. There's not a lot of attachment around. It's not a big deal if they don't get it. So there's a lightness. So, you can play with easy things. But it doesn't have to be just small. It can actually be big things, because sometimes big things we don't even imagine we can get. So we end up actually being very available to them. So a key here is when you don't have resistance, that is thoughts that say something is not possible or available to you, it's easier to receive those things. I'll be doing more videos on that part for sure, on the resistance piece, because it's such an important topic. But for now, just know that the ease of lighter emotions makes all the difference. Now, let me share a manifestation story that happened in my own life. And I'll get into some of the details so you can see what was going on. So this was several years ago. I hadn't gone on a holiday for a while, and I really wanted to. And I was playing around with manifestation at the time, so I wanted to practice it. Now, if somebody said to me, where do you want to go? Well, even answering that question brought up conflict inside. You see, I wanted a holiday. I wanted to go to Europe because I'd been a while since I'd been there, and I really missed it. And winter was approaching, so at the same time, the idea of a hot vacation called me as well. To make matters challenging, I didn't have the money for both trips, let alone for one. I had no idea how I'd come up with that money quickly either. And the thought of pushing to make that money, in such short a time felt quite stressful. So I knew I had a lot of resistance to that. So that wasn't really going to be my path. Then I remembered something really essential. Money isn't always a necessary component to meeting our wishes, even though we place so much value in it, and even though that may be the first thought that our mind brings up, just like I thought, I can't afford it. Sometimes things show up in different ways. This is another huge clue that I'll have to create a separate video on, but for now, let me finish the story. So I decided to be light about my wish for 2 holidays. I decided to be more playful. It's not like it was necessary to my life, and it's not like I was used to traveling twice in, one season that I could expect this to happen. It actually felt like quite a big demand. It was something that held meaning for me though, and I knew I'd enjoy it so much when I just, imagined it. And because I couldn't decide, I put both ideas out there. I simply thought, wouldn't it be great if I could go to Europe and go on a tropical holiday this winter? And then I let it go. But the idea of having both things actually was so satisfying that it helped me relax. I didn't have to compromise. I didn't have to make a decision. I didn't have to say yes to one thing and no to another. I could relax knowing that I could have both, at least in my mind. I actually think that is what made the manifestation so much easier. The idea of receiving both seemed like so much to ask that I couldn't use my mind to plan it out. I just couldn't. And so I didn't take any actions to make it happen either. I just went about my life. Then, of course, you'll never guess what happened. I can hardly believe it, even after living it. A friend of mine who has a job with an airline sent me a message that he had the opportunity to share points for a flight with a friend, and not just a regional trip, but an international one. Okay, now I'd known this friend for a long time, but we weren't that close, and never once had I ever thought he could extend benefits to anyone outside of his family. And why me out of all his friends, And he told me all I had to do was cover the taxes, which I was able to do. That wasn't a lot, just a few $100s at maximum, while the main flight cost would be paid for. Now, the only other thing that I had to be aware of was that it was going to be on standby, but that wasn't a big issue for me since I had the time. So there I was. I lucky to fly to Europe that winter and visit family and friends who I also got to stay with. So all in all, very little money required for the whole trip. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. So my first wish had been granted. I wasn't even thinking about the other one, so that it was actually quite wild that it showed up. So this was just a couple of months later. My father told me that he and his business partner had been given a trip to Mexico to an all-inclusive resort by a company they did frequent business with as a thank you. Now, my dad's business partner was too busy to go, and to be fair, they decided why not offer a ticket to one of their children, and then we could go together. I hadn't seen his daughter for years, but we knew each other and I liked her. We both felt comfortable going together, so we thought, why not? And the two of us flew to Mexico for 7 days in the hot, sunny, tropical climate. All meals and expenses were covered, so other than buy some souvenirs, it didn't cost me a cent. Never before and never since has my dad ever gotten such an opportunity, so it was clearly a major manifestation. That's the story of how I manifested 2 holiday trips to do 2 different parts of the globe without taking action to make either of them happen. And both instances came from opportunities that I had no reason to expect at the time. It really felt like the universe conspired to bring them to me in creative ways and through people I knew. So if you're sitting there thinking, I definitely don't know anybody who could do that, which is actually what I thought at the time, don't stress, because it could bring it. Again, the universe has infinite ways it could bring it to you. Who knows? You just got to keep an open mind. I also have tons more examples, and we'll save them for future episodes. Now, some of you, I'm sure, are in a position where no action seems obvious, but you really do feel a need for something. So it's not just a wish, it's actually a need. I will tell you that I have manifested under those circumstances too. It works best when I use one of 2 approaches. So this is what I've experienced. The first is by taking it lightly. Really entering like an innocent state, like a child imagining their wish being granted. I simply bathe in that feeling and I enjoy it thoroughly for a few moments, maybe a minute, maximum 2, Then I get on with my day when I feel complete with that. And I find my desire showing up on time. I mean, it's amazing. But it's important that I'm able to take it that lightly, because that's not always the case, So when I am, I find it just happens. It just kind of shows up. The second method includes this imagining and feeling, but also does include some action. Again, I get myself like into the state where I imagine having what I intend. I feel it, like I enjoy it, I play with it. Then, if it doesn't feel as easy as like the other example I just gave, then I allow myself to move into a bit of willpower. Like, yeah, what can I do to create this? I create this energy around me. And I ask myself, if there's anything I can do that would support this intention, what could it be? When I receive an idea, I go for it. I take physical action because it feels good to do so. It's like the natural next step. If I rejected the action, that idea, and just sat around waiting, I know that kind of disempowers me. That makes me feel bad, like, I could be doing something, but I'm not. It makes me feel powerless, despondent, and so I know that getting into motion is far more supportive. I also take action with the joy of doing it, not with a push or force. Oh, I have to make this happen. And if I don't, it won't happen. I don't go into that thought. It's like, oh, hey, I could do this. Like, I would do it anyway. That energy supports manifestation, where when you're pushing or forcing, it repels it. Now, there is a third scenario, which I've also experienced, and this is sometimes I don't get any ideas for direct action. It's not like, there's a cause and effect example that comes to my mind after I, feel all the energy and everything. Something that I know that would make a difference. So I don't force it. There's nothing worse than sweating while hoping something will work. So you can go this other route. Connect with what you love in your heart. Be present with it lightly, joyfully as you can. And then after a few moments or a couple of minutes, gently move into physical action, something in your day-to-day life, something in 3D reality. Just getting into motion will increase your frequency and open doors. If you don't have an idea connected to your desire, like an exact thing, like go and do this now, you might just have this, I really need to take a walk. And you go take a walk, somebody passes you on the street and you smile at them, and maybe, you're out grocery shopping and you have an enjoyable chat with somebody who's nearby you, just natural things that that kind of up your mood, or go enjoy nature, whatever feels fun in the moment, that's accessible, that allows you to keep living, as I say, and not obsess about what you want. So I find when you do that, over the coming days, you're going to find yourself just more engaged with life. That'll increase your physical energy, and it will also increase your mental energy. So think about those thought waves now that can travel in new directions. That energy will produce new ideas, and that may very well send you in a very particular and direct action. So do all of this just as if, I don't know, you're traveling like on a holiday. Hey, let me check out this path. Let me check that restaurant out. Oh, I'm going to go talk to this person. When you do it with such lightness and ease, you send out a positive vibration that will take you where you're meant. And you may find out, as I have more than once, that I didn't actually need that manifestation as much as I thought. Or sometimes I find something better. Other times I find myself in action, led by intuitive knowing, and that brings me exactly to what I wanted. Now, before I end this video, I want to add a couple of comments about taking action. Taking action needn't be a dirty concept. In fact, as I said before, it brings richness to the experience of life. Action can be about being true in your alignment. In other words, if you're drawn to something which is positive for all concerned, then it's important to follow through. This shows your commitment. It adds energy to the experience. If you deny it, you're essentially saying no. And guess what? That's going to block your manifestation. Action is also enjoyable. No one I know actually wants to sit around all day doing nothing and just having things appear. I don't, like, I think that would be quite boring after a while personally. It's not what life is made of, nor what most people dream of, maybe one or two things, but not their whole life. So there's joy in action. It's called living. Sometimes there's a purpose to strengthening our resolve and dedication by putting ourselves into the game, and when there's no conflict on your part about doing so, it becomes natural. It's part of the experience, which can feel like a great adventure. So, as I end this is my suggestion. Play with both. Use manifestation alone when things feel easy to wonder about and invite into your life. Use action when the energy is in you and you receive ideas to act upon. And sometimes use both of them. Doing both brings more into your world because you'll be able to experiment without getting stressed, which is so key. Using both manifestation and action at different times creates a divine journey, one that feels more alive than only living by one. So I hope that's helped. And I'd love to hear any comments or questions. So just, add them below. And I will be producing more. So I will catch you next time. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe if you would like to make sure that you're notified about the next one. Bye-bye.